Okay.
Okay.
Tanse.
Lanto. What's it?
Tanse Nina Kiniput Wampaske Mikasimik Wanapio. Many blessings to all my relations in the four directions. This is an impromptu Zoom meeting. And I'm here today with Isidore, Darwin, Paupanakis, my beautiful brother from Pimicikamak territory in north central colonial Manitoba. And, it's an honor to share space with you. I've seen many of your work, much of your work, over the years, and it's helped to inform and guide me in an understanding of my people in Pimicikamak. So could you give us a brief introduction as to who you are?
Okay.
I know I gave you a brief one, but you can do it better.
What's it? Answer to tema. My name is Isidore Darwin Oris Paupanakis, and I'm from Pimicikamak, also known as Cross Lake, and I come from that area, and I have, in my experience, attended a lot of educational institutions where I could not fit in, and but my background is mostly working and translating and interpreting for the elders, the lawyers, the doctors, whoever it may be. But I began that as it kind of dropped on my lap because I grew up with English first, and then I learned to speak my language when my parents left me with my grandmother, who could not speak English. So she couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Nahanwe. We couldn't communicate, but eventually we did. So my learning began around that time, and then I went to school, kindergarten. It carried on through school, junior high, high school, and from there, when I went to high school, I got kicked out of high school because I didn't fit in, or I wasn't able to perform to get educated outside my community. But eventually I worked with the elders. I went back home, worked with the elders since I was 15 years old. And to this day, I still work with a lot of the elders on a personal level, more now than ever. My very dear friend, whom I want to express some condolences and sympathies for, is Esther Halcrow. When I'm in Cross Lake, I visit her all the time, every day as much as I can. She's 87 years old. And if she sees me walking by, going to the store, she knows I'm going to stop by, and she cooks me my macaroni. As soon as I get there, my macaroni is hot and ready for me. My favorite plate. Anyway, that's my past, and I worked with a lot of leaders. I worked with many chiefs and councils from the Cross Lake bands, and eventually started working with Pimicikamak leadership. So yeah, that's where I come from, and I worked with a lot of people over the years, met a lot of people. So I do have a lot of information to share with people.
Now, Darwin, Pimicikamak is a name. Pimicikamak is a people. Pimicikamak is a territory. What can you tell us about Pimicikamak? This community, which existed since time immemorial, and I've seen the petroglyphs. Yeah. What can you tell us about Pimicikamak and its relationship to the land, and even maybe going back to Treaty 5 or before, whatever you feel comfortable with, because I know you're a wealth of information.
Yeah, well, Pimicikamak is a word that describes the landscape, and Pimicikamak has to do with an area where the water flows. Usually, Pimicikamak describes the water flow and where it flows. So it's same thing. It's Cross Lake. Pimicikamak means Cross Lake, just like our sister community in Bemidji, Minnesota. They call it Pimicikamak, that's Ojibwe. But Pimicikamak is the same meaning. There's a Cross Lake in Minnesota, and they call it Bemidji Kamog.
Oh,
So, same thing where a river crosses the lake. And that's the same thing here in Cross Lake. That's where we come from. And
my sister Noretta Mistwagon, you may know, she would say, she described that and talked about, how it's an example that we're all related.
oh yeah. Yeah, language matters. Language really does matter. So yeah, it describes our homeland. That's where our central location is. So that's where we call home, but we historically migrated all over the place. An 87-year-old woman told me, and others too, at a meeting. I think Tommy was there, Rita was there, David Musragan was there. Yeah, she told us, you know what? She said she was 87 years old, John, and she said to us, I didn't know why I was coming to this meeting. She said, but now I know. She said, my story, I have a story to tell you. And she said, my grandfather told us, she said, that we migrated from Pimicikamak, and she's from Tataskiak, Split Lake. And she said, my grandfather told us when he was 9 years old. And I have my friend who's still alive today that can testify to this story. She said, my grandfather told me we migrated from Pimicikamak. There was 4 people that migrated. One to Tataspiak, one to Nelson House, one to Norway House, and to Oxford House. So Pimicikamak people began to migrate to these areas. And she said, well, she didn't say Norway House. She said, Ginaseistewan, Sea Peak, which means Ginaseo River, Jack River, and that's in Norway House. So we do have this history from that. But when she was 9 years old, and she had a grandfather who must have been 70 or 80 years old at the time. And that grandfather told them this story, which he heard from his grandmother. So this goes back 300 years. So if you add up all the time, right?
Right.
So it goes back about 300 years. And quite interestingly, you can find the word Pimicikamak in the history books here in Manitoba. Like David Thompson, the explorer that mapped the Great West Passage, I think they call it. But he kind of skipped across Sipuask Lake, and he was looking for Cree people. He was looking for Crees. He was told if he came out west that he would find Cree people. And he arrived in Sipuask Lake. According to his journals, 2 people showed up there, 2 hunters, and they both came from Pimicikamak. That's what it says in his notes, his own handwritten notes, his journal.
Wow.
So Pimicikamak, and this was in 1782, I believe. So that story kind of always stuck with me, that the elders tell me that. And Pimicikamak, 300 years ago, we have a connection to that land. And our relationship with that land is what defines us as a people, right? So Pimicikamak is a people that do have an identity, and we do have a relationship with the land. Mind you that today it's not It's not a pleasant relationship because of development, but still our faith in the Creator is the reason why we are here today, trying to revive this the knowledge and the identity of the people.
Right.
This is just the beginning. And unfortunately for me and yourself and whoever's listening, we will eventually pass on and we will not see the fruits of our labors.
Right.
And that's what the elders have told me too as well. And this was years ago when they told me that. They said, Darwin, our people are going to come back as a people. And he said, but you will not witness it because you carry all the abuse and the residential school within you, and you pass it on to your children. And then they'll pass it on to their children, and so on, until we all die off. The people that have a little bit of the resin of that abuse.
Right.
Until we all die off, then then God will bless us again. And historically, that's true. That's what happens. Like, I can relate to it from the Western point of view. When something is unclean, you don't want to touch it unless it's fully clean. So in my view, God is going to wait until one day, maybe my great grandchild will have been washed away from all this, all the stuff that we've been through to this day. But yeah, that's Pimicikamak people. And we are, I'm always proud to say that we are a loving people, understanding people, and a patient people.
Mm.
So that's what gives me all the faith in the world, knowing how they are.
Right.
And it's just, we've just been gifted that way, and there are some people that are immersed in the residential school concept of thinking, and yeah, that's what's going to happen eventually one day, through media like yours here, and through other good ears listening that can carry on and educate the people and the world about who we are. But yeah, that's where I come from. And
Well,
thank you for having me.
well, thank you. It's a big honor. It really is. As I said, your words have guided me in many respects throughout the years. And we're living in times that are difficult, but you know what? It's always been difficult for Indigenous people, for a long time, since even before Confederation. I've talked to Russ Divo about a lot of these things, and we talk about termination tables, and we talk about comprehensive land claims agreements and self-government policies, things that are, these are obviously colonial mechanisms that are designed to, impoverish our people. And, but all across Turtle Island, people are really taking a stand, particularly our traditional land defenders. What can you tell us about that and how it's related to, say this, a lot of people don't understand maybe is the difference between Pimicikamak and the Cross Lake Band of Indians. You talked about how they are similar in that they, the meaning is the same. Is it a decoy? What do we got?
Yes, actually, yeah. When you speak, when people speak, they tend to want to always speak with truth, right? The truth of what it is they understand. And let's take a local lobby group here in Thompson. They're called Manitoba Kiwaitanui Okimaganak. And that's MKO is the acronym. And they have a grand chief who's elected by 38 federal chiefs here in Manitoba. Okay. And now, if you look at the title of the organization, Manitoba is an indigenous word, and it's the same thing as Pimicikamak. Okay, but Manitoba, to my understanding, I was told, it refers to an area of land, and it's in English, it's called God's land. Manitou, Manitopanuk, that's what they called it, Manitoba. So the word stuck, just like Winnipeg. Winnipeg again is a Cree word, and Red River is right there, and it's reference to that river. Winnipeg means dirty, murky water. Winnipeg. So, you know, a lot of people don't know they're speaking Cree when they say they come from Winnipeg. Winnipeg means murky, dirty water. So, but the Red River, that's what it is. And if you look at Kiwetnui, that's northern. It means northern. But if you look at the word Okimaganak, okay, that's the word. That's the key word here. That's what people call these chiefs. Okimaganak, right? Or not Okimaganak, they call them Okimagan, singular. Okimagan. And in our language, kan as the suffix of the word is always reference to imitation or
Decoy.
like, let me use like a decoy, like a duck decoy. It's not a duck. It's it looks like a duck, floats like a duck, but it doesn't fly like a duck. So it's there, and that's what these chiefs are named. Okimaakan. In place of the government. They're not the government.
Yeah.
It looks like a government, behaves like a government, but doesn't act like a government. It is not a government. It's just a.
So if I was to say, if I were to say to you, Darwin, don't you understand the Cross Lake Band of Indians has Aboriginal title to the land? What would you say?
I would say absolutely not. In that case, when the treaties were signed, Cross Lake Band came into existence 1 year after the treaties were signed. Okay?
Yeah.
And that relationship that we have with the government, in September 24, 1875, we signed that treaty. The band did not exist until 1876, when the Indian Act was legislated in Ottawa. 1 year later. So if you didn't exist prior to the signing of the treaty, you know, you only existed by way of somebody creating or legislating your existence. And that's the control that we all say, you know, that's the control. That's how they control you. And that's how they're going to treat you as such. If you behave like a band, if you put on that band chief bonnet, that's how they're going to treat you. The way they dictated for you to be treated, how are you going to behave under the Indian Act. And it only makes reference to reserve lands. The Indian Act in totality has the right to govern reserve lands that were set aside by the government.
And for those people who don't know, the lands that Darwin is talking about is 0.2% of our land base. And we're talking about, you know, the second largest country in the world with a population of 36 million people, 1 million of which is indigenous. And so we're talking about a very small land base.
Okay, yeah. But let me correct your statement, John, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
It's not our land base. It's the federal government's.
Right. Thank you.
And that land base is situated on Pimicikamak
Aboriginal
lands.
Say again?
And that reserve, that land base that is governed by chief and councils, is situated on Pimicikamak lands.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
Our
the difference.
language does make a difference.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what they call a reserve in our language? Is Skunigan.
The Squinigan.
Yeah. Land that was left over. I don't know where it was left over from, but
When I was in Pirate Shoshone territory over there in colonial Nevada, it was an amazing time I had. I met a guy by the name of Day Hinkie, and what he told me was, and this was passed down to him by his his grandfather and his grandfather, that he said to me, "We were put here with the rocks." What did he mean by that?
well, we have a word too that makes the same statement. Okay. And I think it's pretty much all over the place. Like the Anishinabek, that's, I believe that's Soto. I don't know what Soto is. Soto is it's a derogatory term to what I'm told. It's a French word which means snake in the grass. It's that's how they were viewed by the Western eye, through their Western eyes. Same thing as Crees. That's through their eyes they see as Crees. So Soto people, they call themselves Anishinaabeg, just like we call ourselves Ininewak, right? Anishinaabeg it's reference to the rock people or the Assiniboine, and then there's other peoples that have I don't know what kind of other people they are there, but there's the rock people. That's who I make reference to. But yeah, we belong to the land, and that's how we should be behaving as rock people. And there are other people that are gifted too with how to relate to the land. I don't know which one it is, but there are some others. I think it's a water or earth. I'm not familiar in that area, but I don't know what Anisinuak means. We call all the people all over through our eyes Anisinuak, people,
Right.
and that's how we see them.
Yeah.
But we call them differently as well. Like when the people came over here in their boats, we call them boat people in our language. And I'm pretty sure you hear this a lot. We call them Emistigusiwak. They rode here in a boat. And that's how they landed on these shores. We've seen them doing that. So we call them Emistigusiw. But that's not who they are. Whoever they are, they know who they are. They can call themselves whatever they want, whatever it is that they call themselves. And I'm pretty sure English call themselves peoples. French have a word for it. The Sudanese people have a word for people, and same with us. We have a word. It's called Ininewak. Ininewak. Yeah. Through my eyes, we are all Ininewak. And I can't call Caucasian people Emistigusiw, because I'm just describing them. But their real name is Ininewak. And that's where that ak comes from, the suffix to that word, Ininewak, Emistigusiwak. So yeah, if I was talking to my buddy over here who speaks our language, and I'd say, yeah, Emistigusiw, boat people, they came in a boat. That's a reference that we all have. But yeah, it's rock people that belong to they are rock people. So, but I'm not. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that particular item, but yeah, I did read up on it somewhat, but I did catch the word rock people in what I was reading. So I just came across it just recently too. So yeah, we have that word and they have that word. I can relate to that.
So, I'm really curious. We're in this moment, we're living in a COVID moment right now. People are getting claustrophobic, and in already impoverished communities, it's become even more difficult. Uh, you know, just for basic programs and services. Our communities are really suffering right now, and yet we're also in the midst of we're still, since 1867 been covered by this colonial blanket that we call the Indian Act, which has been modified several times. And we had changes to the Constitution in 1982 with Section 35 that, some people say, what, it doesn't even matter because it's within the colonial framework. It's under
Yeah.
a colonial umbrella. So we have our traditional communities, right? We have traditional land defenders. We have in Wet'suwet'en territory, right? We have the hereditary chiefs. I think there's 40% of the bands in BC have said, no, we will not sit at these negotiating tables with Canada. We will not extinguish our Aboriginal title. How do these issues, these complex issues, directly affect or indirectly affect the Pimicikamak people?
Well, it's a very uh, it's a very elaborate way that the government and its predecessors and historically the government has always behaved. That's the law that they live by. They conquest. They go over and conquer whichever they feel that they need to, and that's their ways, that's their laws, and I can't say nothing about that, but that's the way they behave. And today, unfortunately, we have become victims of that way of doing things, that rule of law, that they can come and conquest or make peace with us. And that's what happened to Pimicikamak. And to this day, our struggles are not so much with the government, but the real struggle is within us. That's what was harmed.
Explain that.
Well, I, as a Pimicikamak people, would also side with the governments in BC because I would not be an equal partner at the table if they're going to treat me the way they want to treat me, according to their legislation, their Indian Act, and that sets out the rules of how we should be behaving as Indian bands. That was one of the tools that they were using, and over the years, our education system was destroyed. Our churches burnt or flooded. Where we learned to live by the law of the land, the God-given right, and that's how we ought to be behaving like that. And that's how those hereditary chiefs are behaving. They don't want to listen to the government to tell them how to do their business. They just go out and do it. And we're in the midst of changing that here in Pimicikamak. One of the steps that we took was we started to define who we are. We enacted a citizenship law. Nobody can come and tell me who I am. Today, if the government sat down across from me, I'd have to sit here and start slapping on some what do you call it, Post-its. One that would say cross-leg band member, or another one would say that I am a Bill C-31 Indian, or Bill C-31 2, or whatever they call it. I have all these little tags on me, you know, and that's how they want you to behave, and that's how they want to treat you, right? So if you want to be treated as a people, you got to be as a people, behave as a people, just like my elder and my friend, the late Gideon, would always introduce himself. He sat at the table and he wanted them to treat him as such. But because of all this legislation and past history, the other parties would always come around and want to treat you like with the Bill C-31, the Indian Act band member, you know, all these. I'm a Métis too. I was Métis once too. So all these titles that they gave us, you know, sooner or later they're gonna have to take them all off, but they cannot take my skin off. This is God's stuff here. Only He can take it off. But I can take away all the tags and the titles that I have. Cross-leg band member, sure, I'll take that off, you know. Until we get rid of all these titles and all the misnomers. And then until then we can start to behave and act like a people. But too many times our reliance on these government policies that have aimed to distinguish our people, we've become dependent on hinging onto it, latching onto it for safety reasons that we think we're being safe, you know. National chiefs, you know, that to me is the greatest and the most significant view of how oppressed we are as a people, that the Assembly of First Nations Grand Chief would be standing there proclaiming to talk about inherent rights or land rights when they were elected by Indian Act chiefs under the bands, under the Indian Act, who only have authority to govern reserved lands, not people and not the land, only reserved lands. So, you know, I didn't graduate from university, but I understand what that is, you know, and there's people that are lawyers elected to be grand chiefs, and yet they don't understand that concept. You know, if they actually did, I'm pretty sure they would turn around and not walk, but probably run out the door and say, I have no jurisdiction to talk about human rights and land rights. So, you know, that's the biggest thing for Pimicikamak right now is we have to redevelop or revive the knowledge. And it's, let me say this, it's not legislation. It's not municipal rules. It's not provincial. It's a spiritual relationship that we have.
Right.
And we have a long way to go, John, to get to that point where, again, like I said, our spiritual relationship with our Maker has to be reestablished. And according to what my elders have told me, you know, our Creator loves something that is clean and is not dirty with sin or anything that is sinful.
Right.
If your coat is pure white, He will turn to you and acknowledge you. But if there's a stain on it, He won't even look your way. So we have to get rid of all these stains in our clothing so that we become clean, so that once again the Creator will grant the gifts that we ought to have, you know. But until we turn from that darkness that we're in right now, the Indian Act chiefs and the federal government policies, until we come out of that bush, you know, then we can start reviving our people's faith and jurisdiction to their own personal self. It all begins, like Tommy would say, it begins with us.
Right.
You have to personally believe that and behave that way.
Now, Darwin, getting back to Treaty 5,
Yeah.
the original signatories, and Tenastinum, if I said his name correctly,
Yeah.
the original, one of the original signatories. What can you tell us about him, the intention of the treaty? What can you tell us about what it meant to be Kisaman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. They busted him, according to the stories that I've been told by people that were children at the time, and this was told to them by their parents who always talked about people. Like even today, I still hear those stories from our people and some of our elders that were not elders at the time, but Depastenem was described as a holy man, and he was a medicine man. Okay, so Kiseman is again a word that is, let me put it in a context. Kiseman is equal to the Pope.
Right.
They have the same stature. And as you know, the Catholics have the Pope. And if the Pope speaks, that's what they're looking for when he speaks and is out in his place there at the Vatican.
Yeah.
They wait for him to speak and say something profound, because he has a relationship closest to God. And that's where he gets his direction from, to feed his people. To feed his people. Same thing with our Giseman. He's the closest one to God, and it's filled with so much love. That's why we call him Gise. Gisewat Disiyuin. That's love.
Right.
Gisewat Disiyuin means love. You're right.
Kisakitin means I love you, right?
Yeah. And a Giseman is a man full of love for his people. So he has been designated by God, right? Using the people to say, okay, this is a Kiseman. I will work through John to feed my people, right?
Right.
So the Kiseman is the one that is probably equal to the Pope.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when he speaks, that's what the people do. So that's what I was told this man was. Tepastenum. He was a Kiseman. He was given the right to talk to God on our behalf. And this was the direction that he got, is go make treaty with Canada. Because nobody knew we existed in that area. All the mapping that was done historically, there's no reference to Sipoest Lake. That area was left untouched for whatever reasons. I can't speculate, but the only thing I can think of was God had something to do with that. Why he didn't want people to know who we were and where we were. So he directed other people to go other ways, like David Thompson. He came out of Sipoest Lake and couldn't find a Cree, so he went that way to do the passage to map that area. But Tepasteram was not a chief. Some people referred to him as a scout, as the one who would go in ahead of everybody. But again, according to the stories, he was a well-gifted medicine man. He healed people, and that's what he did, because he had so much love for his people. And that was his title, Kiseman. And the people followed him. So when he was sent to go sign treaty in Norway House, it was a spiritual direction,
Right.
And I'm not surprised that it was done on Manitoba, in Manitoba, because Manitoba means God's land. That's what it really means. And that's what happened. And he's a Kiseman, under the same rules that the other churches have. You know, the accent that I'll use the word accent. The white man calls them shamans.
Right.
Right. They call them shaman, and there's no chiefs at the time. There was just Gisemans.
Right.
But that's our title for him that we had, and it's come down through the years. Some people recall these stories vividly of how gifted this man was with love and compassion for the people and the land. So that's who he was, according to my history that I was told, and I can't add on anything to that because that was such a long time ago. I just had passed this on to people. But yeah, he was a Gisema.
I spoke to my beautiful sister Jessica Westichakut, and we talked about we talked about the terminology Kisaman, and she said at first she said chief, but then she said, "Oh, wait a minute." She said it's like this, and she said, and she said when you see the geese flying,
Oh yeah,
and that one in the front. And so I think it's important to sort of have a little caveat there to understand that what happened in the community happened very organically. These roles happened very organically, as naturally as you would watch the geese migrate.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the geese did not have an election, or maybe they did. I
Are
don't
you
know
sure?
how they behave, but somebody put that lead in front.
Yeah.
Some had to. All right.
Yeah.
They don't pick straws, or maybe they do. I don't know. But it's the thing that the way they do their thing, and that's how they behave. So all the time the leader is chosen, and that first goose that flies is the goose that does the job.
Right.
So again, it's a chosen one. So Jessica is right in that context. Yeah.
So when we think about it's I mean, after Treaty 5, I mean, there's a lot of history there that we've gone over in previous sort of webinars like this. There was the whole the modifications that occurred within the Indian Act and things that happened in terms of residential schools and the Indian agents and all that. And then moving on through history, I just wanted to hit like the 70s, maybe maybe talk about the dams, or maybe when the Northern Flood Agreement came into being, and how impoverishment and what has happened by way of the provincial Crown Corporation, Manitoba Hydro, how that has impacted the people. What can you tell us about that?
Well, historically, our relationship with the governments and hydro corporations and provincial governments have always been dictated by what they believe and according to their laws. They make laws as they see fit, and they make a lot of pieces of legislation that direct them. And unfortunately, they all have been misguided directions, because they continue to treat us as they want to treat us. They, like, stereotypically, there's a stereotype that's in there too, and that's what they've learned in the past 150 years. That's what they live, and that's how they've lived. So how it's affected us is right now today. Pimicikamak is on the cusp of reviving its nationhood and its people are becoming aware. You know, there's not many, but there are some people that are aware. And again, the people catch on, right? They eventually catch on to something new. And this is something new to us as well, because this is what was taken away over the past 150 years systematically. So today, Pimicikamak is on that path, as well as many other nations across this land are eagerly trying to get on that path. There's always a residual definition of our people all over this land. You know, some more than others, and a few are almost extinguished. You know, and that's our struggle. We are fighting with this world that categorically, systematically try to define us as a people, and that's how they want to treat you. So again, Pimicikamak people want to be treated as a people, and we ought to be treated as a people, you know. But then again, the way we behave, the way we act is a struggle. Like right today, our present chief is acting like a band chief, and that's how we're going to be treated, you know. So unless we start behaving differently, then we'll be treated differently. But yeah, our struggle is within ourselves as well. And Pimicikamak, I'm happy to say, is on that road, and I've been assured by the elders that one day we will. So that's my comfort zone. I always say that one day we will.
Right.
And I say that in terms of I'll be long gone. I'll be probably a tree growing out somewhere in the bush, you know. But again, our people, my grandchild, and his children and his grandchildren are the ones that are going to fully benefit from being a people, you know, the way God intended us to be. And when we start behaving like that, like I said, once we're put on the white sheet, and then we will begin to be accepted and blessed.
Right.
So that's a struggle, but again, it's a good struggle.
Now, to give people a little bit of a backdrop, I think it was December 16th, 1977.
Yeah.
Is when the dam had gone into operation, and the northern, or was that when the northern flood agreement was signed?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and you know, in that document, they talked about you know, that they would eradicate impoverishment in the communities. I think, you know, one of the representatives held up a pen and said that should the waters fluctuate above or below the height of a pencil, that our people would be compensated.
Yeah, Ed's right.
So this is what I guess would be called this, you know, in a very real respect, a modern treaty. And you know, so impoverishment, I mean, I think there's about nine dams now along the Nelson River, the Kichisipi. I think the last one was Kiesk, or, you know, but in 2014, Pimicikamak people came together and they occupied Genpeg, the Genpeg hydroelectric dam. Now that's the first dam along the Nelson River, which controls the flows of waters from Lake Winnipeg. And it's essentially the hub of all the other dams along the Nelson River. Now, back in 2014, when Pimicikamak occupied Genpeg, I mean, that was an amazing thing, that a rural community, a remote community, would suddenly have provincial and federal eyes. I mean, it's like all eyes were on Pimicikamak.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that act of self-determination and you know, and its impacts?
Well, and I have a view on that. As you know, we exercised our right at that time to say, okay, enough is enough. We're tired of being treated as such. You have made a deal with the bands, with the 5 signatories to the Northern Flood Agreement, and we acknowledge that there are issues that they have jurisdiction over, which is Article 3 of the Northern Flood Agreement, and that is land exchange, which seems to be a moot subject nowadays with this whole.
They just hit the mute button.
Yeah, so we kind of awoke into that concept and say, look, you can talk about that with the band, whatever you want, but when you talk about land and water, you're dealing with the people.
Right.
Keyword, the people, and that's Pimicikamak people, not Cross Lake Band, but Pimicikamak people. And that was a big statement that the governments try to grasp or wrap their head around it, and they couldn't. But the surprising thing about that occupation was, one thing, yeah, everybody went there and everybody grabbed onto this ride that we were going on. And an amazing fact was, nowhere in Canadian history has there ever been a minister that attended him personally an occupation which set speed. Minister Struthers came to the exact place, and we did it so fast within a week or so, that he came there and said, okay, let's talk. And he met with the Pimicikamak people at that time. So yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff that you can talk about there too, but again, I guess it depends who you're talking to. It's like right now, I wouldn't, if I was at the other side of the table right now, I wouldn't talk to anybody in Cross Lake, because of the fear that we would have to address the issue of water and land and people. It's a scary thought, yes, because who are you going to be dealing with and how are you going to treat them is another thing. Man to man, that's the honorable thing to do. People to people.
Right.
And right now, the most dishonorable thing you can do is you can enter into these sub-agreements like the MIAs and comprehensive implementation agreements that seem to take away rights. But in reality, John, when the Cross Lake Band signed the Northern Flood Agreement, okay, it was done under the deception that the band represents people. It makes reference to band members within the meaning of the Indian Act. Yeah, who wrote that? Who wrote that piece of legislation? Not us.
Right. So, but it impacts Pimicikamak.
Yeah, Pimicikamak is a people, so it's different. Right. And that's when we said, look, you've overstayed your welcome here. You're going to have to deal with us, and yeah, that began that process, and it's still, we're just struggling with it today. A few lawyers from the other parties, Canada, Manitoba, and Hydro, know what they're talking about. In particular, at one time, a lawyer for Hydro, Bob Atkins is his name, was trying to tell us that what Hydro was doing. So I tried to understand what he was saying. And then I said to him, Bob, I think I know what you're talking about. And he said, what? Sounds to me like you're talking about Ininiwi Pimatsuin. And he said, what's that? And he said, that's what you destroyed, Bob. That's what you're talking about, the destruction of our way of life. In Ninipimatsuin, our way of life,
Yeah.
the people. And I said, that's exactly what you're talking about. And then I said, call it what it is. And then Cross Lake at Pimicikamak office there, we have a program called Ininipimatsi program. And that's a program that supplements people that want to go and live on the land. Go get your education. You know, take your children out on the land. Teach them about the fish, about the waters, about the snow, about the rain, about the trees, about the birds. Ininipimatsuin. So, yeah, that's what happened at that time. So a few of them have caught on, but because they're given direction to view us through a lens that's created for us. You remember those little toys where you flicked and see those
Yeah.
Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck?
Yeah.
That's the rules that they go by, the lawyers and the consultants.
There you go.
You know, that's how you see them, and that's how you do it. But Pimicikamak is not that,
Right.
you know. Yet they try to talk about it. And like I said to that lawyer, I think I know what you're talking about. He said, Hydro did this and that and this and that and this and that, and you want to pay for this and that and this and that and this and that. I said, you're talking about a way of life. And I'm a translator, Bob. I know what you just said. I said,
Yeah.
so yeah, an Inipimatsi program is the one in Cross Lake that is definitely a seed for our people. You know, a lot of people go to that program and then they go out on the land and spend time on the land, you know, and that's what Hydro took away, the ability for us to be able to live on the land and take from the land what we can and what we should. But that's been hindered. So I told him, call the program what it is, an Inipimatsi program. So the money was put in there, and then our people go out on the land, and that's it. It's a little defined right now, but we're growing. Like, they give money out for moose hunts, right?
Mhm.
They'll give you some grub and some gas so that you can travel on the land, and by giving them funds and food, that's kind of Hydro's way of saying, oh, I'm sorry, I hindered your way of life. Here's something to help you along the way. You know, so you can go actually live on the land. And Ininipimatsuin means our way of life. And it doesn't mean just moose hunt. It doesn't mean just goose hunt. You know, if John was a Pimicikamak citizen, which I don't know if you are yet.
Yeah.
So if you are a Pimicikamak citizen, you can go to this program and say, look, I'm going to go out on the land and live. And it doesn't matter if you're going fishing. It doesn't matter if you're going hunting, camping, or trapping, or for a goose hunt. It could mean that you're taking a date out on the land. That's Ninipimatsuin. It's part of all of it.
Way of life. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you're doing a courtship to a woman. You're trying to get a family going, and so that your children can live on the land. It is in Ninipimatsuin. So you cannot be denied if you say, oh, I'm going to take this girl out onto the land. We're going to spend a few nights over there fishing, laughing, you know, doing your thing. It just means you're going to be living on the land.
Right.
That's all it means. So, yeah, Hydro and the province are slowly, itsy bitsy, coming to terms with that concept, you know, and that began out of the occupation of Genpig. You know, when the first time that I went to a meeting with the province of Manitoba, they said, who are you? So I said, I'm Darwin Paupanakis. I'm the youth council representative of Pimicikamak. And so, Tommy and the others introduced themselves. And then they said, well, we have an agreement here with the Cross Lake Band. Where do you get your authority from? They said. That was a question that that I'm sure the province regrets asking, because we said to them, if you want to know who we are, then go to your university and ask them to find out. Let them to do a historical study on Cross Lake Pimicikamak people. And Anne Lindsay, I believe, was the one who was given the task to give that answer. And they looked into Pimicikamak, and yeah, they came up with a lot of stuff. And that's where I found that piece of history. What's his name? Scott, no, not Scott. David Thompson, the explorer who came this way. And in his footnotes, we found the word Pimicikamak, and that was in 1782. So even before the province was existed, we existed already, and that's where we get our authority from. We get our authority from God, who put us on this land, and that's what came about from there. And so now they have to live with it. So slowly and surely, people ask the right questions, they get the right answers, and that's the whole concept of dealing with peoples.
Right.
I got to get to know you before I deal with you correctly and honorably, and respectfully. I got to get to know you instead of me giving you titles. I can call you whatever I want, but that's not who you are. You are who you are. So I gotta get to know you, and that's the relationship. That's what you call a relationship. It's not an agreement, but a relationship. That's what's called for under international laws.
Right.
And we just want the province and Canada to respect that. Stop bringing up these. Stop tagging me with these little post-its that say I'm a Indian band member, or I'm a Métis, a Build C-31, all these titles that they have. Get rid of that. So.
Oh boy, that would be a great meme. And I actually have a bunch of post-its, I can just put them
Yeah.
all over the place.
I actually did that, John. I actually did that at a meeting.
You did?
With the governments. Yes, I sat there and I started writing on these post-its. I go, Cross Lake band member, Métis, Bill C-31, Bill C-31-2, or Bill C-231. I don't know what they call it. But again, it's all these little things that come out of the Indian Act, and the way they've stereotypically labeled us according to their needs, and much of it still goes on today, unfortunately. Like today, that I'm still beside myself, John, when I look at the government and they say true reconciliation, yet there's still a Department of Indian Affairs. There's no department for Blacks. There's no department for the Asians, but there is for the natives.
The Department of European Affairs.
Yeah, exactly. And they still treat us that way. And they want to talk true reconciliation. It's a sad day for me when I see that. But again, back to it. It's all about relationships.
Right.
We have to have a relationship with people. And until that relationship is a good one, then we can start talking real development, real human development, real land development, real economy development, everything.
Relationships.
Yes.
I talked to a beautiful elder, Lali Hokwats, in Treaty 2 territory. Again, this was back in 2018 when I was with that youth group. He explained, the whole colonial idea of sovereignty. Sovereignty, obviously, it's a European term.
Yeah.
And it's misunderstood because in our communities, it was one of relationships, but with colonialism, it's, well, who's the top dog now? So, right?
Yeah.
But our governments were essentially flat, whereas theirs was, it was a hierarchy, and it was, and it was a patriarchy, and it was one of subjugation, right?
Mhm.
So, and that was embodied in the 1876 Indian Act, with various modifications that have occurred throughout the years, but which is essentially that is the umbrella through which Indigenous peoples, Aboriginal peoples are being dealt with in colonial Canada. I know that there, it's when I look at the traditional forms of government, and then what has been imposed by way of the Indian Act, and our traditional forms of government were driven underground right back in the late 20s, I think it was, and but today we have communities like in Haudenosaunee territory. They have Indian Act band councils that exist alongside of the longhouse, right, which was once padlocked. Uh, are we looking at something like that possibly occurring in other communities where traditional forms of government will sit along parallel to these Indian Act to the Indian Act band councils, and how do we handle things like a lot of people worried about the distribution of poverty of our people, the programs and services that are so critically underfunded, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I do see that possibly occurring, but again, it would be, if it did occur in Pimicikamak, it would occur under a system where eventually, gradually, everything would shift over to Pimicikamak. Because like I said, once people start to relate to you as a people, then they will eventually let go of these behaviors that they have towards us, and the behavior that they have towards us, unfortunately, is colonial, and it's the one thing that's destroying our people, the spirit of our people. But we're gonna come back to it, and again, that's where this thing comes in, where you say that there's going to be a two-tier government under the Indian Act. Realistically, they only have jurisdiction to govern the land, the reserve land. That's all they have jurisdiction over. They have no jurisdiction over peoples. People are not defined under the Indian Act.
and it's all within the confines of the reserve, not even Pimicikamak territory.
No. So once, like Pimicikamak today, we have approached a few companies like Kraft, which used to be Tolco. They used to do the logging here in Manitoba. So we approached companies like Kraft and say, look, you need to get consent from the people under the rules of the Environment Act, or the Environment Commission. All these regulatory processes that you need to go through in order to get access to lands, and a lot of times it's a bogus act, bogus pieces of legislation where they say, "Oh, we're going to consult you," and they consult with you, and they don't listen to you. They can't. Again, and it's a systematic thing that happens because of the lies that they perpetuated on our people and within their legal systems. Like today, under the Indian Act, which is a totally racist piece of legislation, again, that they don't want to get rid of because they want to continue to treat us as such.
Right.
But if it was true reconciliation, John, that system would not exist today. If I understand it correctly, the way I've been treating our people, if I was the Prime Minister, is wrong, then what makes them be treated like that should change. Get rid of the Indian Act and say, okay, people, it's up to you. Again, that's all it takes. It's up to us. It begins with us.
Do you think that a unilateral withdrawal from the Indian Act is possible, or do you think it's going to require?
Well, that's that's how we entered into these treaties, John. Because, like I said, the Indian Act did not exist when we signed the treaties in 1875.
Mhm.
Speaking for ourselves.
Right.
So that's how we entered into these agreements. Treaty 5, we entered in with Canada as a people.
Now, Arthur Manuel, who you may be familiar with from Sequemic territory, the late Arthur Manuel, another mentor of mine that has served as a guide for me in many ways. He understood these things deeply, and he was able to communicate them to the grassroots, along with people like Russ Dibo.
Mhm.
And he refers back to the softwood lumber wars that were going on, and probably still are. And what he did is he took the issue of deforestation before the World Trade Organization.
Mhm.
Because what he said is that the proprietary interest existed, for Aboriginal people. Aboriginal title existed, and in that Aboriginal title existed proprietary interest. And his point was that it's important that we get organizations like this, like the WTO, which is the largest trade tribunal, I think, in the Western Hemisphere, maybe the world, or one of them biggest, to have them acknowledge that it tells us that there are proprietary consequences, there are global proprietary consequences regarding the interest in that lumber, because
Yeah.
nobody's getting, the people from the land aren't getting paid,
Yes.
and because of that, they're able to sell that at below market value, and they have an unfair advantage, right? And then that lumber goes to the United States. So
yeah, they
I
haven't.
guess go ahead.
Yeah, they haven't accounted for it.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
that's I see that as a true statement. But again, I don't know. I'm not an Englishman, so I'm not really 100% clear on everything that I say that comes out of my mouth, unless I speak it in my language.
Yeah. I
That I
guess
know.
his
I know
feeling
that.
was that the important thing was to, from the ground up, like a forest, from the grassroots and to the global community, is where this has all got to go, but it's really got to start with the grassroots communities, and everything in between. You can shuffle things around all you want from a legislative colonial crown standpoint,
Yeah.
but you're still going to be on that 0.2%.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
So it's a matter of these traditional peoples that are the real land defenders, like what we see with the hereditary chiefs and Wet'suwet'en territory, Pimicikamak territory. Where tiny house warriors put their tiny houses in the path of the Trans Mountain Kinder Morgan pipeline, and of course there are many examples of grassroots communities coming together in a good way, and maybe to serve as models to help for other people that are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's exactly what we were doing. When we approached Kraft and we told them, look, you're gonna have to go through this process. It's a very, strenuous process, and a lot of regulations that we have to go through. We said, why don't you come to us and we'll tell you, what you need to do, so that you can get a consent before going to the get a permit or a license from the government. Bypass all this this stuff that we have to go through that gives us a headache, and at the end of the day always leaves the indigenous people outside the door looking in. It always happens that way. So instead of going that way, let's build a relationship with Kraft. What, you come to us. So they did. Eventually they came across Lake, and I said, this is an area we're looking at. What is your interest in this area? So we look at it, and we did a land use study that we use. And again, that's another video that I participated in.
I've seen it.
You seen that video?
I've seen it, and we posted it, I believe, on Standing Bear Network, and I put it in the in our SBN editors
Yeah.
messenger.
So
So
all that information that's on there, craft takes and news and says to us that, okay, this is what we're prepared to do. And we talked to them, and if it's good enough, it's good enough. And they said, sure. As long as you respect the land, and as long as you do what you need to do to respect our rights to that land, and honor the integrity of that piece of land that you're going to be using, as long as in tune with everything that we stand for, then you're welcome to use it. And benefits sharing, sure, and all that stuff is in there. So we give them the consent prior to getting their permit.
let me just say really quickly, for those who are just tuning in, many blessings to all my relations in the four directions. I'm here with Isidore, Darwin, Paupanakis from Pimicikamak territory, and he's giving us a little history, telling us a little bit about the land, and how mechanisms of colonialism have impacted the community, and what how the traditional community and others, how people they're coming together to really step up, for their own sovereignty and self-determination in their own particular territory, which has been heavily impoverished, not just by way of the residential schools, but of course, Manitoba Hydro, the 60s scoop, and all the other things that have affected our northern communities. Yeah, it's an honor to share space with you, and you've been speaking on behalf of our people for a long time, and not just our people, but Indigenous people. I think all across Turtle Island, I think the message is really resonating. Is there any final words maybe you want to give to grassroots, people that are organizing and getting in touch with these things?
Yes. I want to stress. I'm going to stress this point that I'm going to make before moving forward. And if you want to speak, or if you want to work, or if you want to help in any way, the process of being a people. First, we must have to understand that there is a relationship that we have with the land, and the land is connected with our Creator. They call him Creator, they call him God, they call him Allah, they call him whatever they want, but we call him Kisemantu. That's what we call him, Kisemantu, who works with the Kiseman to guide us. So we have to understand that this is not a politically driven process. It's not an economically driven process. It's a spiritual process. So until we understand and get to terms with that, then we can begin to move forward. And it always has to start and end with him. That's the most important thing you got to do, to get that understanding. And once you get that understanding, he will speak to you. He will give you tools like for yourself. He gave you me, albeit it's been too long coming, but yeah, all of these things take time, and you have to believe that whatever steps you're taking are within the realm of God-given blessings, because that's what you're going to stand on. That's the footing that you have to be able to stand on that platform, that we are a people with a living God, and we have a relationship with him through the land, and that's the key thing. If you don't have any understanding whatsoever of that relationship, then you best sit back at the end of the hall and listen and pay attention and wait for direction. Key. That's very key.
Right.
Without it, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
So understand that relationship, and then And then from there on, everything will come into place as it always does. You know, like I said, I've worked with Pimicikamak for a very long time, most of my life,
Right.
most of my adult life. You know, I was a youth council representative until I was age 45. I had to beg them to let me
You're just
go.
a big kid.
I used to have trouble introducing myself as such, you know, because it got to a point where, look, I'm 45 years old here with a wife and children, and I call myself a youth council representative. But it was the youth council that always would appoint me, you know.
Right.
So, yeah. But yeah,
That's terrific.
your faith in God is what you need. And we have to stand on that platform if we're going to speak the truth. Because if you do not speak the truth, you're going to end up running around trying to cover it with more lies, you know. But the truth always stands on its own. Nothing can taint that. But that's my last words, John, and hopefully people will grasp that little word there, faith and relationship with our Creator. Kisemantu, kisagi gunagagino. He loves us all.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Darwin. And for those of you who just turned in, this is Isidore Darwin Paupanakis, and we're going to talk more. You know, so this isn't the end, and I'm looking forward to that. And again, it's an honor to share space with you, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, we'll see. That's it now. Thank you very much.
Iko say.